So this session is going to cover our beach and our classique Roman shades. Two styles. Those of you that remember the days of Design Blinds Australia would remember they had a product or a Roman shade called a beach Roman shade. So we've brought that into the Luxaflex style of product. So we have the beach and we have our original Luxaflex Roman, which is called Classique. But we're going to start with the beach. We always recommend Roman shades are fitted on face. They're a great insulator if they're extended past the window frame for good coverage, and they should be mounted above the window so you're really blocking out as much of that natural light as possible, and then being able to stack that shade up off the glassed area if required. Romans, whether it's beach or classique, will give you a pelmet style look when that shade is raised. With the beach control options, you have the standard cord lock and pulley system, which is at the rear. So you have a side operated cord, which does actually sit slightly behind the fabric. We'll be putting a shade up here shortly, and I'll point that out to you as well. You have another option with the beach. You can actually do a beach as a reverse Roman, or we call it a reverse Roman, and you can have it operate from the top down and from the bottom up. It creates a little pelmet like you see on Classique, but this is a beach product, so we have the timber battens sewn into the fabric. We hem the edges. Looks like a beach with a Classique pelmet, but operates top down, bottom up. Obviously that means you've got two sets of cords to operate either the moving rail at the top or the bottom rail from the bottom. You have chain drive option as well. I'll hold that up shortly and show you the chain drive when we fit the blind that we've got. And you also have a motorized option as well. Now, when we motorize a beach Roman shade, we actually use our roller blind edge hardware system, and obviously that means you can use the same motorization options that you have for your edge roller blinds, including power view. So you can have a power view operated motorized beach Roman shade. Light filtering and insulation obviously is one of the key factors you need to consider when you're talking Romans. So light will filter around the sides of the blind. Even if you're using a block-out fabric, you'll still have some reflected light coming around. Now this is because a small clearance needs to be left for the operation of the blind. To reduce the light filtering around the sides, it's just practical to make the blind wider than it needs to be when face fitting, so that you cover more area across that window. The beach has got quite a small headrail as well at 30 millimeters, so it does help reduce the amount of light that filters around the side. I will just show you this shade here, and this is a beach shade that we will fit shortly. Go that way. So you can see this is the cord lock pulley system. The headrail's only 30 millimeters, so it's quite small. You can actually order a beach shade with a slightly smaller headrail of 20 millimeters, but you then can't have the cord lock. So we'd probably recommend a cord lock is a practical thing to have. So in its standard format with the cord lock, it's a 30 millimeter headrail. There are other headrail sizes available. As I said, 20 millimeters without the cord lock, but we do have a 50, a 60, 70, a 90, and a 120 millimeter headboard that if you require, you can call up. Now, the brackets that you use when you fit a beach Roman is a simple angle bracket. If you are fitting the product in a reveal scenario, you won't need to use these brackets. You can just drill through the timber headrail. Again, it's a product we recommend for face fit. So depending on the headrail size that you've chosen or that you've received, you'll receive the appropriate angle bracket to suit. What was the zoom out, Trev? Yep. Beach chain drive headrail. The headrail on the beach is a 40 millimeter headrail. And you can see here we've got the chain drive mechanism attached underneath that headrail. These brackets, obviously, that are the standard brackets that you would fit and then sit the headrail on top of that bracket. These will need to be fitted to the head rail after you've taken the actual chain drive mechanism off. So if you are doing a beach, I'm going to lay it down just for 1 second just to remove that. To show you what I mean. The bracket that holds the beach chain drive mechanism to the head rail, it's like a spring-loaded aluminium Venetian bracket, but it works in a reverse scenario. So you do need to unclip that. You would need to attach the head rail, and then you would come along and click that back into the brackets. $40mm, as I said, is the head rail, the chain drive. If you're going for the motorisation option, your head rail projection will be 70mm. And as I said, you can choose from any motor selection available with the Edge roller blinds. Keep in mind, guys, Romans are pretty heavy blinds. When you get to some of the maximum sizes for Romans and a heavy block out fabric, motorised option is probably a really good recommendation for those larger sized blinds. The beach base rail, as standard, is a sewn pocket. Let's lift this one here. So it's like a colonial pocket that you would have on a colonial roller blind. So it's just a formed pocket with an aluminium bar placed inside. The battens. We sew in a timber batten, 6mm round timber batten, into the back of a beach Roman shade. And that's what the eyelets go into, that the cords loop through to help pull that Roman shade up. So they're sewn rear pockets with 6mm round timber. In a beach, we side hem. So all of our polyester fabrics, including the shears, have a 20mm stitched side hem. If you're selling a beach with a sunscreen fabric, whether it's PVC or fiberglass, they are just ultrasonically clean cut and sealed, so they're not hemmed. The acorn that comes standard on a beach Roman is a clear lacquered timber acorn. You can call up chrome, brass or other painted acorns at an additional cost, and those are listed in your pricing app. Limitations. For standard cord and chain, the minimum width is 500mm, but the maximum width is 3030, so just over 3 meters, with a maximum drop of 3 meters. So we can do these shades quite large. Remember though, when they're large, they're heavy to lift. So chain operation or a motorised option is probably worthwhile considering. The limitations for motorised though is even bigger. We'll go up to 3600 in width and up to 4200 in drop. Quite a huge shade. Now, as we did when we launched the modern Roman shades, we moved to a 0-0 deduction. So what we did with all of our Romans now, right across the board, your face and reveal deductions are 0. So you just give us your opening size or measurement from edge of architrave to edge of architrave, top to bottom. We'll make the deductions at our end. Corners and bays though, like always, you need to look at the measuring instructions in your manual and on your pricing app. Actually quite a good product with the Beach Roman because the fabric comes off the front of the timber head rail. It can actually be quite a good product in a corner and bay scenario because you'll have very small light gaps, but just be conscious that the cord will still be sitting slightly behind the fabric, so you will need to put your hand in to access the cord to operate that shade. Couple of things we do with Beach that we don't do with any other product, and certainly don't do it with the Classique. Firstly, a perfect blind. We refer to a perfect blind as a blind with spaces that's divided evenly from top to bottom. And obviously, as always, the total number of panels will be odd. So the panel spacing will vary according to drop. That's our standard. There's no surcharge for that. But if you want us to do a line-up blind, which means we're going to make another blind and line it up to your first perfect or standard blind. So the line-up blind will have the same panel spacing as the perfect blind, but the bottom pocket will vary depending on the drop. So again, we can do that at no surcharge. If you want panel match, we will line up all the blinds to the longest drop, and we will panel match to a tolerance of plus or minus 10 millimeters. Again, there's no surcharge for that. If you want us to line up all the blinds to the longest drop with a plus or minus 3 millimeter tolerance, it takes a bit more work from our guys in the factory, and we'd refer to that as being side by side. If you want that, not a problem, there is a surcharge that applies. Beech Roman shades also offer you the option of common cording. Now this involves threading the cords of one blind through the headboard of its neighbouring blind, and the neighbouring blind will then have two operating cords, one for itself and one for the blind next to it. The two blinds can actually be operated independently from one location, depending on which cords that you're pulling up. So for that scenario over glass sliding doors, where you can't secure the cords hanging down in the middle, run the common cording through a neighbouring Roman shade. Not very common here, but we also offer a non-operational beech blind. These are supplied with no wheels, no rings, no operating cords. It's essentially a headrail and the fabric hanging. Pricing is 90% of the normal list price of a normal beech blind, and it might be something that you'd put in that small glass panel next to a front door where you're not really ever going to raise the blind or the shade, but you want to give it coverage for privacy or aesthetics, or you want it to match the rest of the house. Roman shades, whether it's beech or Classique, have a stack up of about 250 millimeters to 350 millimeters, 250 to 350 millimeters. The stack ups of blinds will vary depending on the drop, even if those shades are lining up to one another. Now you can request at your end that you want a lower stack up or less stack up, and we can adjust the actual panel height. It's something that you would need to ask us to look at on your order when you're placing the order. As I said earlier, beech blinds, we sew in the timber batten, we hem and we sew the sides. So if you're using a blockout fabric, you will have pinholes that will let light show through the blind wherever that stitching occurs. So along the batten pocket lines, the side hems, and the base pocket. That is a characteristic of how we make the beech Roman shade. Now when we install this blind, this is straight out of packaging. It's been sitting here for a few months actually, so it hasn't settled out. When you first install a Roman, it needs time to settle after that installation. So the fabric type, the size, the weight, and the weather, those environmental factors, will all affect the degree to how quickly a blind settles out. And because the process of settling out is a little unpredictable, the final drop of a blind may vary up to plus or minus 10 millimeters. Again, one of the reasons we strongly recommend this product is fitted on face. So what we're going to do now, we've got a standard beech shade here, and we're going to install this. Now I've pre-fitted one bracket here already. Obviously I'm fitting it on face. Just going to come along and put my other bracket in. So as I said, we've just got the standard angle bracket that would be supplied with the standard 30 millimeter headrail. Make sure I use the right hole. I'll actually just line that up. Because as far as spacing this out, you would actually hold the shade up. You would mark where your holes are, and you would then fit the bracket accordingly. Now these brackets go on, and then the shade sits on top of that angle bracket. And there are some small wood screws that are supplied that you would then use, come through the bottom of that bracket into that timber headrail. So I'm going to sit the timber headrail on that angle bracket, make sure I haven't caught the cords. Just using a hand screwdriver here because it's only a little screw, pre-drilled hole in that timber batten. Excuse me. Couple of little screws in there for that. Put that back down. As I said, I've got my cords over here, and this is just operated single operation. Each time I pull it off, that cord lock will lock off. And as you can see, just by looking at that there, that needs to hang to settle out. This is one of our translucent fabrics in Temple. So it's been left in packaging for quite a few months. Needs time to settle. You can generally hold a Roman shade, pull it down nice and firm with the hands to get a good idea as to where that Roman shade will end up settling. But again, one of the reasons we strongly recommend this is fitted on face. Now obviously, you have long cords when you pull up a Roman shade. It's absolutely imperative that the cleats that are supplied with the shade are fitted. So you fit 2 cleats, making sure that the bottom cleat is high enough so that the cord can be tied off and the cords are at least 1600 off the floor. 2 cleats. My house is a bit lower here than what we would probably prefer, so 2 cleats means the shade is up and the cords are now secured and completely out of the way. So now we'll move on and we'll talk about the Classique Roman. Those of you that have been selling Luxaflex for many years would know this as our original Roman shade. I've been with the company 14 years, and this is the Roman shade as we always made it. So Classique Roman shades are quite simple, functional, and attractive because they're actually price positioned at a lower price point than those hand-sewn beach Romans we just looked at it. Again, they're great insulators. The fabric's actually located a little bit further back, comes off the back of a timber headrail, so it can actually insulate better because it can be located a little bit closer to the window. We strongly recommend it's a face fit product, and we recommend that you measure to be lifted above the window. So you're not compromising natural light, you're being able to lift that shade completely off the window if need be. And again, when they're raised, it creates a pelmet type look or effect which can really complement the window. Has a front operated cord lock and pulley covered by a matching fabric pelmet. Again, the bottom rail finish is that sewn bottom pocket with an aluminium laid inside, but you do with this product have an option for an additional surcharge to have an ellipse base rail. You've got those options there in the whites, the anodized, the black, the magnolia, the gunmetal. You've got all those color options in there to suit. If you are selling a Classique Roman with a sunscreen fabric though, it will automatically come with an ellipse base rail, so you'll need to specify your color. We don't offer the bottom pocket if we're using sunscreen fabric. So Classique is different. It has an aluminium extrusion along the back rather than the sewn in timber battens in the beach, timber tassels, and obviously the plastic cleats which are supplied as standard. A couple of things you can choose from as well with the Classique is you can have a timber batten option. This is called a Classique Signature. Now, timber batten colours are white, black, natural, sugar maple, and cottage white. The timber tassels, obviously the standard timber tassels will come colour coordinated to the shade, so they won't be exactly the same colour as the fabric, but they'll be colour coordinated as best we can. But you do have the option of calling up brass or metal, like bell or trumpet type acorns. Again, with the cord cleats, if you want to dress up the Roman a bit more and not have that clear plastic cord cleat, which will come supplied as standard, you can ask for a polished chrome or a brass one in either a 70 or 90 millimetre size. Now the headrail dimensions on Classique is always the same size headrail. So it's 33 mil by 19 mil. It's either light beige or metallic silver. Actually, a timber head rail, but it's wrapped in a polymer coating. Comes to you pre-drilled with slotted holes for easy installation. When you get a Classique, it'll always come with this standard Classique installation bracket. Now, that's designed to be used if you're base fitting or if you're top ceiling fitted. So that one bracket fits both scenarios. If you've specified face fit, you'll also be supplied with soft shade extension brackets to enable you to move that bracket away to allow for the fabric to pull up and stack without scraping on the wall or on the architrave. Again, Romans, like I said before, guys, measuring now is made much simpler. Give us your opening size, give us your measurement architrave to architrave, make no deductions, and we will make the deductions at our end. Corners and bays as per your manual or as per your pricing app. Beech is good in corners and bays because fabric's off front of the head rail. Classique is fabric off the back, helmet at the front. You will have bigger fabric gaps in corners and bays with the Classique. So if you are in corners and bays, my recommendation would be the Beech Roman if Roman shades is what the customer's looking for. Side-by-side blinds in Classique. If side-by-side blinds obviously are together or in windows near each other, if they're the same drop, then the panels in the Classique Roman shade will be equal. If the side-by-side windows are different drop, then the panels will not be equal. There are no special lineup options available with the Classique like there is with the Beech Roman range. If you want to install in a reveal, you can have it fully recessed with as little as a 50mm recess. You can partially reveal with a minimum mounting depth of 45mm. The shade stack height, 280mm. So if you're stacking above a window or an opening, you can work out that extended drop to enable you to pull it completely off the opening. We're now going to install a Classique in Mauritius fabric. I think it's drizzle, I think. We're going to put these brackets up, and again, we're going to fit these on face. So what I'm going to do is I've got my head rail up here. Again, we have not installed this shade previously. So this is the first time the shade goes up. We've just marked and pre-drilled our fitting holes. So I'm just going to quickly put in my 3 brackets. Shouldn't take me more than a minute or two. Make sure I get the right actual holes. All going well. I did check these earlier, make sure I've got the right spot. That's where my slot is there. Yep. Now these brackets are L brackets, and then they have a threaded bolt attached to it with a wing nut in position. So we're just taking the wing nuts off. I might just hold this shade up. Show you what I mean by those slotted holes in the head rail. So the slotted holes in the head rail, you can see here. So you can see it's a slot in the head rail. So sometimes you may not get that bracket exactly where you want it. So you have a little bit of flexibility when you've got the shade into the brackets as far as moving it along just that little bit. So obviously we're going to bring that through the top of the fabric. So where that elongated hole is made, there'll also be a slot cut in that fabric. So we're going to come along. Generally they find their spot pretty easily. And if this was a really big Roman, you might want someone to help you hold it up and get it started. Once you've got one each end, obviously it's pretty straightforward. Now you'll see this is only a blind that's about 1250 millimetres wide, but we've got 3 brackets. If we've supplied 3 brackets, we strongly recommend you install with 3 brackets. Roman shades obviously are heavy. Classique's only available with this cord operation, not available with chain, not available motorisation. Classique is this cord operation only. We haven't even unwrapped the cords, that's how new this one is. So I'm going to pull my pelmet down so you can see that pelmet comes down, covers the head rail, covers the cord lock and pulley system, and my cords are at the front. Now again, this shade, you can see lots of creases here. It's been packed, been in our storeroom for quite a while. The first time we fitted it. Normally you'd fit a shade, you wouldn't normally have that many creases on it, but over time, those creases will drop out and the shade will find its true drop point. The drop tolerance, again, like it is on your beach Roman, is plus or minus 10 millimetres. And again, depending on environmental conditions, the weather, whether it's a hot or whether it's a cold day, whether this is a shade that's in a western window that gets lots of sun or a southern window that gets none, the time that shade could take to settle and drop could be between 2 and 4 weeks. It really depends on the environmental conditions. So there you have your Roman shade. Again, if I pull that Roman shade up, I have long cords. So the cleat, obviously, actually absolutely paramount that the installer fits those cleats so those cords are no lower than 1600 to the ground, enabling a loop of 220 millimetres to be made. That's it, guys. Thanks for your time.